Hephaestus webinar. We're here because pre-roll production has entered a new phase. So we're not going to stall. We're not going to kick the can around a little bit. Let's jump right in. Volume is up. SKUs are multiplying. Margins under more pressure than ever before. And of course, the dreaded C word, compliance, is tightening and is right around the corner. So today's conversation is about what happens when growth introduces complexity and how operators operate and maintain control throughout it all. My name is Tim Stromble. I'm the executive producer with Canacribs and Canacribs Consulting. I'll be here hosting today's conversation. I've had the pleasure of linking up and working with the guys over at Hephaestus for a little while now. So honored to be able to sit in and help kind of traffic control this conversation today. Joining me today, Shahar, the CEO of Hephaestus, all the way out in Israel. How are you, Shahar? You're muted. Step one. We'll come back to you. Ben, head of biz dev, sales, everything at Hephaestus. How are you, man?
Doing well, Tim. Glad to be here today. Glad to be able to talk about what we do in the pre-roll space. And yeah, glad for everybody to join us today. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. We have some amazing insights coming to you from some data sets from Headset and some other places that we pulled. Some exciting stuff there. And of course, David Greiner, just a Power Aura X user, head of production and everything at Garden Greens in New Jersey. David, did I accurately describe what you do over there?
I'm in charge of everything that keeps this place running. So when I got Manny here, he's the production manager. He runs the area where we have our Hephaestus pre-roll machine, and that's why I brought him along in case in case anybody had any questions that I couldn't answer. Great to be here, though.
We're excited and stoked to have you. By the way, as we go, if you have any comments or questions, just drop them in the comment section. We'll get to them in a little bit. We'll have a big Q&A, so we can kind of jump into anything you specifically want to know about. But just for our context, Shahar, the head guy at Hephaestus, he brings decades of automation experience. Him and his family story are actually really interesting. Maybe we'll jump into that in another webinar, but just decades of automation experience. And Hephaestus, wow, really a robotics and automation company that is going in and perfecting pre-rolls alongside a lot of other avenues that they run. Shahar, I think the mic's working now. How are you, buddy?
Good. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Happy to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, let's start by laying out why we're here. Okay, pre-rolls now represent 30 to 40% of cannabis sales in many markets, mature markets especially. It's not a niche product anymore. You know, one of our colleagues, Josh, who we work with on a weekly basis, said it used to be something you just threw away, right? The trim, the leftover products that people, who throws it away first, you or me? But it's not niche anymore. And there's infrastructure that has to go through that. In 2024, while overall cannabis growth stalled in terms of sales, pre-rolls were up 11 to 18% year over year, depending on what market you're in, with infused SKUs being 30 to 45% of that category revenue, despite there being this massive influx of new SKUs. So Ben, I want to jump you in here first. What are you hearing from operators as the category accelerates? What pressures come with that introduction of growth?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that operators face is trying to identify which opportunity to go after next. There's a lot of categories that are expanding quite rapidly, as you mentioned, and a lot of SKUs that people are going after. Infused obviously is one of the main ones, and just within infused alone, you have tens, dozens of different types of products you can make. So which one do you go after? And then size matters, and what we're seeing more these days is reduction in size has actually been the preferred SKU, going on a smaller format, multi-pack. So yeah, a lot of it is the pressure of just understanding, okay, I've got to make, whatever I'm going to make next, what is that going to be? And just hoping that you make the right decision.
And that turns into SKU expansion. How are we making that right decision? A lot of metrics point to SKU count expanding faster than volume, as it says. 20 to 30% in just 24 months, you might be looking to expand 50 to 100 pre-roll SKUs. It's now common when we're looking at large-scale operations. We're seeing that on the Canicurb side. You're seeing that on the Hephaestus side. I want to turn to David. From an operator's perspective, what happens when you just get SKUs handed to you like this? What has to change inside your facility to accommodate all of that?
The biggest thing that has to change for us is, the tooling and everything else, and working with Hephaestus. The tooling, I can call them up today and have the right tooling that I need, in a few days, which is, greatly appreciated, because these guys get way behind, and, the guys are, up higher than us. They're on us to get this stuff out the door, because, pre-rolls, they're like gold these days, especially in Jersey. So.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about changeovers, recalculating density depending on the material you're running, infused versus non-infused, training staff, keeping staff up to date. How has infused complexity, impacted what you've done there day to day?
I'll let Manny speak to that, because he deals with that more. So that's why I brought him.
So we've been able to run diamond infused grind very good. But when it comes to distillate, we can't really get it to run very efficient on that machine. But the diamond infused product runs perfect.
It runs like butter.
Yep.
So different infusion tactics require different processing strategies, no matter what machine you're using to do it. It's almost like you're creating this numerical equation and trying to solve for the perfect product at the end, right?
Correct. Yep.
Awesome. Ben, on an operator and equipment standpoint, what do you do? What happens once SKU complexity hits and you look at infusion, you look at, branching out into new products? Because I know Hephaestus, while it touts itself on the ability of the Aura-X to produce, a number of SKUs, you guys also have a pivot ability to come in because of the robotics and automation experience to say, here's the problem. Let's introduce a solution that fits inside of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I would say probably the first thing we do, and doesn't matter what your process is, what machine you're using, is really going and talking to our operators, understanding what they're currently doing and what the challenges are and where they're trying to go. We've been in hundreds of facilities at this point. We've seen things done well, and we've seen things done where they could use improvement. And not that we have all the answers, but we have seen a lot of different operations trying to do different things. So I think the first step for us is really going in and understanding, okay, what are you doing right now? What are you doing well? What are you considering expanding to? And then at that point, we can lend whatever advice we have on, what the best path forward is based on their current situation. Some operations just aren't built to handle certain products. And so they shouldn't try to force that SKU into their product line if it's not something that they're already comfortable with or already something that they're doing well. And that's, again, kind of going back to what I said initially, really understanding, okay, there are 100 different opportunities out there, different SKUs we should go after. Which are the ones that make sense for us? One, just from an operational standpoint and the company who we are, but also, of course, then looking at your region and what's moving in your marketplace.
That's really interesting. Adam, I'm going to get to you and your infused diamonds or distillate in just a second. We will cover that, but we're kind of naturally progressing into scale, bringing in operational risk, kind of what Ben just alluded to. You could open yourself up to create this product that you're in love with, but it creates 10 times the friction in your process at the different product that could have a similar value. As scale increases, your risk increases. We've got labor turnover at 30 to 45% in this industry. So you're constantly having to retrain. Manual lines can be 3, 5, 10 operators, and the variability in their output could vary greatly. So, it's not just about speed, how many you can do an hour. It's about that sustainability and the stability. Shahar, I want to bring you in now. When operators typically see that manual systems aren't sustainable anymore, and Ben, you can weigh in too, but where do you see that breaking point?
You're talking, if we're talking like a monthly output that we're aiming towards automation, I would say that around 50K actual sticks a month, it would make sense to start automate. But it's also a matter of SKU. Like how many of these pre-rolls are the same? Because if you're making 10 SKUs over 50, maybe it doesn't make sense to automate. But then again, if you know that your expansion is going to be as big to a point where you would need to automate, those are the numbers, I would say. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You know, there's so many variables that go into this, right? There's labor costs, there's input costs, there's all these different factors that are unique to each person's operation. That 50K mark, that's if you just need a general answer, I would say, yeah, that's what we tell people. However, you know, one thing that we've seen evolve in the cannabis space is the ability to now get more realistic financing or more traditional financing. I wouldn't say we have traditional financing as opposed to normal banking, but we are seeing financing options where you can get into equipment for, you know, lower interest rates and that sort of thing. So it does make the barrier to entry lower. And from a ROI standpoint and from just a cost analysis standpoint, you can get in earlier than what most people would probably normally perceive that they would need to be hitting that mark in order for it to make sense.
Awesome. I want to move on because this, I think, is a very important way to frame the conversation and making a concrete point here. You know, if you're a brand that's doing million plus, you know, basing this on 8 million pre-rolls annually, just, you know, not even a tenth of a gram, but 3/100ths of a gram can become 240 kilograms of material loss in a year. You know, just estimating that at, you know, 600 plus 50 is not worth automating. Do you suggest a knockbox? Adam, we will get to that too, because that's a good question. But you talk about just material loss in manual labor and manual SKU. I always say that micro inefficiencies produce macro results, and that's what this means. You know, you're talking about a 6-figure loss annually. You know, you can scale that down. If you're at 1 million, you're still at probably 6 figures of potential shift. And that's before labor. David, when you saw your output scaling at Garden Greens, how aware were you of trying to track, you know, density drift, labor inefficiencies, things like that, before you even thought we need to scale into automation?
So we had automation. We had some. I'll just say we had some accelerants, and to be honest with you, we weren't happy with the way they were, the quality of the joint. The firmness. The way it crowned. There's a lot of things we weren't happy with, and that's why. And actually, the Hephaestus is actually faster too, hands down when it comes to 1 gram pre-rolls. The Hephaestus, the Aurora X, smokes the rest of them. It really does. I mean, we've run them side by side, so I can say that accurately. And and not only that, the machine itself is super simple to work on. The changeovers are really easy, and it's just easy to troubleshoot things. That's on, because of simplicity of it. So that's why we bought it, and it's helped us out a great deal. And we're thinking about getting a couple more, actually. So,
well, great. I mean, that sounds like a great progress to the relationship. Moving on to slide 6 here. Facilities producing over 5 million, and it doesn't take much to scale up to 5 million. Increasingly moving towards semi or fully automated systems. 60%, I think it is, of MSOs report either investing or research and investing into automated solutions, and I bet you that number's higher. People probably aren't even reporting that they are. But Ben, what do you think's driving that shift towards large scale up automation? Is it margin recapture? Is it fear of falling behind? What sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. Well, if you're talking specific about MSOs or any company that has more than one location, one of the challenges you run into is repeatability and consistency. You can have the best SOPs in the world, you can have the greatest operators in the world, but it's really difficult to find that consistency from one location to the next. So that's one of the challenges that automation addresses. And then labor. It's as we know, this industry, the turnover is high, extremely high. So the cost to hire, train, and then fire one employee, or whatever the situation is, it's very expensive to do that. And it's just hard to find good labor, especially people that want to come in and do these types of tasks and do it repeatedly and do it well. So again, when you add all those challenges together, automation just makes sense. Also, eventually we've been saying this now for quite a few years, but eventually this industry goes to becomes federally legal and gets regulated by the FDA. Now you start talking about terms like GMP and other acronyms that require a lot more tight processes. And that's, again, where automation can help you achieve those marks without really changing what you're doing.
Yeah, we're talking about huge impact. And I mean, just conservatively, you're looking at a 5x enhancement per operator by introducing, really well done automation. I don't think enough people understand the reject rate and the overfill rates and how important they are on a mass scale inside your business. That's something we'll probably jump into again in a minute. David, I want to jump over to you now. When you talk about, workflow, operator focus, consistency through your operation, before you brought in pre-roll automation to now, how have you seen that impacted as, the managerial side? I imagine, coming in and watching machine production like this, it makes it a lot easier on your job. You don't have to be as hands-on training and making sure people are doing what they're supposed to do. But I'd love to hear what you think on the operator level.
So, and my biggest thing is, since we've started this automation, we use a lot less people in the packaging area, so that it's helped out that way, and we produce probably 3 times as much. As far as training and stuff like that, like this machine, I think they spent 3 days?
2 to 3 days.
I think they spent 2 or 3 days training everybody, and not everybody is an expert, after that, but it doesn't take long, and everybody gets pretty good at this machine. It's like I said, it's simple. It's pretty simplistic. So we've gained a lot.
Yeah. The gains are great. You can really see tangible gains. The things that I think slide under the radar are your operational risks. I mean, that is what's up right now. Compliance penalties, even inconsistency in manual labor can really impact the downstream. So your end user can get products that, your canoe variants can be 20% or more in all kinds of different factors. And this is where you start looking at, okay, we have pre-roll production is one part, but what about our brand? What are we putting out there that's representing our brand? Are we trusting consistency from operator to operator, or is it a standardized, people call it the McDonald's model. Anywhere you go, you're getting the same burger, right? This is what we want out of your pre-roll experience. Everywhere is the same experience, and that's what the brand on. Shahar, is this infrastructure thinking, I guess, when you look at a brand and how automation like this helps build brands? I know Hephaestus has done this with numerous brands throughout the US, but that consistency and infrastructure must be so important from a high level.
I think that was the main thing initially, how to make the same joint again and again. And only then came the versatility. Because at the beginning, if you think about it, 10 years ago, when we developed the first one, there was no industry, almost. There was like people rolled their own joints. And then moving into at least food level automation that can repeatedly do the same pre-roll again and again was crazy. When we started, I was never asked. I remember when we were starting, when we started to get questions about the 98, because it was only 109 and 84. So now we got all kind of pre-rolls that we're doing, and we're doing it again and again. So I think that's just crazy, and I think that's something great for the industry. And you can see it when you're moving to other markets like Europe right now, or other states that are just opening. The same level that, let's say, California dictated is moving, but it's not all at once. So I think that's a point where automation really comes in handy, because you just take the SKU and just move it. It's going to be the same in a different state or even in a different country. Very interesting to see that.
Again, thanks for joining us, everyone. If you want to drop a comment or a question in, go ahead and hit the comment box and drop in whatever you like. We'll get to your questions. Adam, still going to grab your questions in just a minute. We are plugging in some Hephaestus info, because what's really interesting about that, and Shahar, I'm going to go back to you, because Hephaestus and the history the company has in robotics and the automation is lengthier than the cannabis side, but really because a lot of the technologies your team has figured out can easily drop in terms of robotic automation, taking out manual labor. When you started out, you probably didn't get a lot of custom requests, but large companies that use Hephaestus, I don't know if we want to name drop, we certainly could. More and more, you're getting companies reaching out to have you problem solve different parts of their production bottleneck because of the expertise in robotics and automation. So is Hephaestus more of a robotics partner? I mean, you look at all these other pre-roll manufacturing companies, and they offer a machine to make a pre-roll. That's basically, start and finish. Hephaestus seems to be looking at this like a soup to nuts, end to end. And then also, if you have more, troubles, taking on those as well.
There's a lot of questions in one, but I can tell you that we never say, and Ben is my witness, we never say no at the beginning. We always try. So I think this started as let's try, and it became a machine. And then the machine came hundreds of machines and hundreds of SKUs. I think more now we see more to your question. Now we see more at the end of the line packaging. We see how our knowledge is coming in handy, because creating a pre-roll is a very difficult task in automation. You're trying to fill a material that is inconsistent in essence and put it into paper, which is very fragile vessel. And then when you get pre-rolls, it's easier to put them in whatever you want next. But every application now is it's a project, because of the industry. If we would have this conversation in 15 years, I think it's going to be easier, because in food business you can see that most of the end packaging looks the same, but in cannabis everyone has his own thing, so we just need to solve it. And I think that's where the industry is right now. 5, 6, 7 years from now, it's going to be different.
And that's what I think is interesting, on the Cannacrib side, jumping into facilities around the U.S. And if you haven't heard of Cannacribs, go ahead and hit on YouTube and type in Cannacribs. You'll see, a number of, amazing cultivation profiles over there, including some that feature Hephaestus. But Hephaestus is looking at it from the integration side as well. And Ben, here's where I want to bring you in, because, we look at, this is the Hephaestus line. So your grinder prepares for the Aura X, which rolls, which goes into automated counting, automated tubing, MAP, which is really interesting, modified atmosphere packaging. We'll talk about in just a second, because that's a newer technology for pre-roll that, Hephaestus is stoked to be bringing to market. But Ben, where do you see most brands, I guess, losing control and probably bleeding margin throughout this process?
Well, I think there's a couple areas. I say for us, the first thing that we notice or that stands out when we go into a facility and try to identify, okay, where can things be tightened up? It always starts with their input materials. How are you storing your cones? What types of cones you're using? Some are more consistent than others. And then, of course, your flour preparation. That's going to be one of the most important factors. Again, doesn't matter our machine, just pre-rolls in general. So flour preparation is huge. And you can't expect to get a consistent output, a consistent finished good, if you don't have consistent input materials. So that's something that we really hone in and focus on with these operators. A lot of operators think they're doing a great job. Some of them are not doing as great a job as what they think they are. So it's really starting from, let's build a solid foundation, and it really has to do with those input materials. Once you do that and you've got that part of it solved, then whatever your process is, it's really fine-tuning that, so you do start reducing that waste factor that you talked about previously, Tim. That's something that when people think of automation, the first thing they think of is, okay, labor reduction. Of course, that's the obvious one, and that's usually the biggest change when you go to automation. But the consistency, the inefficiencies of most processes, people don't really understand how much of effect that's having on the bottom line. So for us, it's taking that next step and identifying, okay, where are these inefficiencies? How can we address those? And then at that point, it's just taking those numbers, taking whatever those metrics are, and trying to fine tune every one as best you can until you can, get it to where you can't really do much more. But it all starts with the foundation. It all starts with that base of your input materials.
I do want to divert from the deck for just a second because Adam, you brought up a good question that I think aligns with Ben talking about input materials. Adam wrote, most automation works better when the material is free flowing, i.e. drier and smaller mill spec. By drying products to a target moisture content and smaller mill size, this may address the workflow, but could be at the cost of product quality. How does the Aura X address the variability in the plant? Not all flowers are the same, even the same genetics coming out of the same gardens. Ben, I want to get your take, and then I want to talk and hear what David has to say about that being on the operator level.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Adam, you've got a handful of great questions in here, and we could probably spend an entire webinar just going over those things. So please, we'll connect offline and we can go into more depth on your questions. As far as how we handle that product, that strain variability. So the newest version of the Aura X, it's been out now for quite a while. One of the things that we focused on was really being able to make it handle infused material. And this will tie back into your question. With infused material, infused products becoming, one of the hottest SKUs, not just in pre-rolls, but in cannabis in general, we had to figure out a way to adapt our machine so it could better handle that infused, that stickier, that wetter material. Without turning this into like a breakdown of our system, we've incorporated various modifications in our system that allow you to move that stickier wet material, whether it's infused or just a wetter, more sticky flower, with tamping rods, with different screens. It's really difficult to explain without having a visual, but essentially us making the machine better run infused material essentially makes it better run in a wetter, more sticky material. So again, hard to explain without showing the visuals, but that is something we focused on, and happy to send you more information about that so it makes a little more sense.
And what's interesting from the perspective of adoption is the largest pre-roll manufacturers in the U.S. run on Hephaestus, and that's all I'll say about that because their SKUs are quite advanced to include infusions and all that, different sizes, shapes. Hephaestus. Go ahead.
Tim, I just want to jump in and say it's not always just about infusions. It's keeping the grind size. And I think I feel like Adam is going there with his question. So it doesn't need to be super dry because, to Ben's point, because the infusion solves harder stuff to deal with, not just humidity level, but also the grind size doesn't need to be powder. It can be 2.5 or even 3 millimeters that goes with the machine. Obviously, there is tuning to it, but I think the versatility of whatever you want to achieve, not every strain reacts to optimum when it's grinded in the same way. So you want to be able to differ between strain to strain on the way they're grinded to eventually want the best possible pre-roll. So that's what the machine will give you because you can just play with it.
David, what have you seen from an operator perspective and how you've dealt with strain variability and infusion and all that stuff?
Well, I can let Manny talk about it more, but what I can say is just like go on top of what Shahar said, it really starts with the grind, what size screens and stuff we use according to what strains we use or what strains we're doing. And that really helps. And then of course with the Aurora, when you change strains, again, this is all a learning curve. Once you learn what you need for each strain, you kind of have the machine set up. We have the recipes in there where they can just, we're going to this strain. I got this recipe right here, and kind of hit the ground running. It's just a little bit of a learning curve. And, the more we do it, the better we get at it. So, and these machines actually help us. The grinder with the interchangeable screens and all that stuff helps us. And then of course the pre-roll machine. And I don't know, you got anything to add to that, Manny?
I think what David said was completely true. The machine is very versatile when it comes to being strain dependent. The great thing about it is it takes minor adjustments to get the machine up and going. So that's the great thing about it.
Awesome. Nick, we're going to get to your question in just a minute as well. I love that. That's a good one to hit on. Getting into what I think is my favorite part of this and talking about the modified atmosphere packaging. It's something that's not being done in pre-rolls right now, but the introduction of this I think is going to be amazing. for operators, especially large scale operators who can produce, larger SKUs and then store them away. Oxygen accelerates degradation 2 to 3 times faster than, if you were to inertly store it. And we all know as terpenes degrade, potency declines, flavor declines, your user experience declines. And we've all had one bad meal at a restaurant. We don't go back to that restaurant. And so when that happens with your brand, you lose a customer. And yeah, you don't hear about that today, but you start seeing that on quarterly reports when you see sales and attrition decline. So Shahar, what was the motivation behind bringing a modified atmosphere packaging solution to the market? I know it's in an early, exciting phase in terms of out in the field, but I think people are excited about it.
It started like the oral. We had a need coming from an operator in Israel, and then we just tried solving it. Now we're still always, as you said, in a learning curve, but we got 35 plus years of experience for modified atmosphere packaging in food, and food is more versatile compared to cannabis. So one strain is gonna react different from the other, but still lettuce is gonna react different from meat, or you name it. So we are seeing the impact on an actual pre-roll or even flour that is packed is huge when it's open. Would say when it's in the open air. I think MAP also helps with keeping the moisture levels very stable, which help with all kind of other like an umbrella of advantages here. And we got the technology. I think that was the main thing, because we just know how to do it. It, like you said, this is, I think, the most interesting project or projects that we're doing right now in cannabis, and I think it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. David, I want to ask you in a minute about New Jersey and how shelf life is something that's worked its way into your conversations over there. But I love this slide because if you do, $10-15 million in pre-roll business a year, and certainly those numbers are higher, so they give context to the conversation. But even 10% of that, if your inventory expires, degrades, gives a less than optimal experience to your end user, that's $1.5 million of brand risk you're putting on the table. Even 3% is 450. So like, we're just conserving it down. You could say, hey, this really makes a ton of sense. But when you think about run through and shelf life and inventory out in New Jersey, what's coming to your mind in terms of problems and how long products can be on the shelves and stuff like that?
Well, the good thing about New Jersey is, it's actually a bad thing too, is we haven't really had a need for this yet, because the biggest thing is in New Jersey, our shelf life starts from the day it's harvested. So we only have a certain window to sell the stuff. So, for us, it hasn't really affected us yet. Not saying it won't down the road. It probably will, because everything changes. So it might help. And it will probably be something we'll look into in the future. But as of right now, the shelf life is really dictated by the state, and we have to abide by the rules. So
great example. So for reference, everybody, I'm up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington, where if you go into a dispensary, you'll see a 10,000 pre-rolls, and I'm probably not exaggerating, up on the wall, and the sell-through on those is nowhere near as high as you'd see out in New Jersey. So you do have pre-rolls that are sticking on shelves for weeks at a time. And so those people are, exposed on that side. But one of the things that, stood out to me for the MAP side is the ability to produce in larger volumes per run and then store and then be prepared for when something happens. I'll give you a great example, and everyone's lining up for their 420 push coming up. Everyone's gonna, dispensaries are doing a big 420 push. Imagine if you could put all of those away in March and say, I don't need to scramble for the next month to get everything ready for 420 because I'm good to go. Deploy. I'm, in Mexico sipping margaritas on April 19th because I don't have to put out any fires the day before. So that for me on an ownership level is very exciting. David, I want to talk about the transition a little bit from, not just today's market, but kind of what you're seeing down the line, scaling up from 1,000 pre-rolls a week from or a day from one operator to tens of thousands. What surprised you the most, I guess, about getting into the pre-roll automation side? Was it that you could achieve the quality you were looking for at scale? Was it simple removal of headaches? What did you enjoy most about it?
Simple removal of headaches, really. When you deal with people, it's a headache. So I mean, that's why we went to. Sorry, just being honest. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's why we went to the Hephaestus pre-roll machine, because it meets our demands. I mean, we had an action pack manual machine in the beginning, which was just 2.5 years ago, and we're now to 3 pre-rolls, and we're going to get rid of the 2 other that we have and have all 3 Hephaestus, so we can just keep up with the demand. Our pre-rolls are selling like hotcakes right now. Everybody wants them. Everybody, this day and age, people don't like rolling their own joints. They want them, they want them done. So we're just trying to accommodate everybody.
I love, we got a great comment, 2 comments to highlight. A great example market is Minnesota. Given the lab delays and backlog, they benefit from MAP. That's a great example. Nick said the Colorado crunch is a real thing. It's very dry compared to the Pacific Northwest or East Coast. How does the Aura X handle dry versus moist flower? And what's important for this in the MAP context too is being able to seal that in time. When you're in an environment like Colorado where pre-roll the humidity can be so dry, pre-roll can be zapped very quickly. That's a huge factor. Ben, do you want to talk about how the Aura X handles dry versus moist flower? You kind of alluded to it earlier, but if you want to do a quick secondary recap.
Yeah, handling dry flower is actually more simple than wet, and that's, as Adam brought it up in one of his previous comments, that most other, whether it's a system, a knockbox, you have to dry the flower out. So making something drier, that's easy. So as far as the Aura X handling dry, yeah, that's not a problem at all. Again, most systems are built to handle dry material, so that's going to be the easier of the two to put through the system. But again, with dry, one thing you can have with dry flour is a lot of people turning it into dust because of the grinders they're using. If you turn something into dust, well, it's going to pack more tight. You're not going to get a good airflow. There's going to be just inherent issues you have with that. So again, going back to your input materials, just making sure that you're aware of that. The Aura X, whether it's dry or infused, or wet, can handle that larger grind size. So even though it is drier, you can still have a larger grind size, which is going to give you a better smoke, a better end product than if you turn that into a dust product.
And I know this is a Hephaestus webinar, so we do talk Hephaestus machinery and the Aura X and stuff like that. We've hit on a number of topics that are kind of broad to the range. I do want to talk about the Aura X in that it is the only machine out there that does straights or cigarette style, blunts, and cones, so all 3. And what's interesting is, certain machines in the space can only do one of those. And so you could get some skew lock where you can't expand and hit different parts of the shelf. So Ben, what have you seen in terms of the flexibility unlock with the Aura X of people going and now creating all these different SKUs out of one central system?
Yeah, so oftentimes when somebody gets into the Aura X initially, they're looking at making 1 or 2 products. And usually it's a cone-based product, a 0.5 gram and a 1 gram. Those are kind of the standard ones that everybody starts with. And maybe they have ideas of what they're going to do down the road. But again, you see what the market's doing, you adapt, or you just decide you want to come up with a new SKU on your own. That again is where the Aura X has an advantage, because you don't have to reinvest in new equipment to make a new SKU. Again, you mentioned whether it's a blunt, whether it's a cone, or whether it's a cigarette style product, glass tip, wood tip, ceramic tip, doesn't really matter. Our machine is built to handle all of those. It's a simple change of tooling, which once you've done it a few times, that's really about a 5-10 minute max changeover process. And now you're into making a completely different product.
Shahar, how do you future-proof production in an industry that is moving this fast? How do you keep up with everything?
We buy stock. No, I'm kidding. we at the festival, we're growing with the industry. And I think we are kind of leveled with the way the industry is growing, and we're doing it fast. We grew our production area here. We more than doubled it just the last 2 years. Same in Vegas. I mean, the warehouse in Vegas holds numerous times more than it used to be. It's much bigger, and the team in the States generally is so much bigger than ever. And also for the new technologies like the map technology, the AutoTube, some new models that we are developing. This is the harder one to keep in track of what's going to come up and how many of these we need to hold in hand. But I think today, if any client is asking for an Aura X, he gets it pretty fast because we got a system that's running very smoothly, and we can get a machine in just a few weeks up and running in a facility after QC and everything.
David, I want to shift over to you and talk about retail and the velocity. And you mentioned that you can't keep your pre-rolls on the shelf, which tells me that you're delivering a great user experience because you're seeing those repeat customers, repeat orders. What feedback have you been hearing about how your pre-roll products have been taken into the market, from your retail partners that you could share with us?
Well, I'm not necessarily in sales, but I just talk to different. I talk to different people at different dispensaries, and everybody raves about. We have a couple of pre-rolls that they really like. Pete's is one of them, right?
Correct.
Our Pete's brand, everybody loves that because it's economical. It's very reasonable, and then we have some Test Kitchen's another one, right?
Ceramic cones.
Our Test Kitchen ceramic cones is one of the main reasons I bought the Aurora X, and it runs the hell out of them. I can tell you that. And just people like them. I don't. Everybody I talk to loves them. I don't know how else to explain it. It's weird. Everybody loves Garden Green stuff here in Jersey. So
that's the place you want to be. So we're going to get to questions now, but the to kind of wrap up, the theme here is growth introduces complexity. Consistency builds trust. Being able to adapt, that's what makes market leaders. And then control is, I think, the most important one, because control of the production, that is where you capture that margin, especially on a large scale. So, the next generation of pre-roll leaders is already out there. They're already kind of setting the tone. They're doing it by control. They're doing it by repeatability and consistency. So now what we want to do is we want to get into the live Q&A, and I'm just going to go from the top. Adam, I think the only one we didn't address on your side is for pre-roll operators lower than 50K per month. Is automation not worth considering? What's the common scale from hand, in the middle, Aura X? Ben, do you want to start with that one, or Shahar, or what do you think?
Either way. Shahar, you want to take it?
I can take it. So the question is, what's the estimated output for using an Aura X, right?
Well, how do we scale? So we go from doing, let's say we're doing 1,000 a day by hand. So that's what, 30,000 a month, 25, 30,000 a month. Not necessarily at the point of scaling up into full automation. What does that ramp up look like? Is there an interim? I think there are some technologies that might be coming for processors like that. So maybe we let that question lie.
Yeah, we got a solution for you very soon. But I think if you're talking about the Aura X for a second, because it does make sense at around 50K, like we said before, I think if you are consistently doing those numbers and know that something is coming, you get a big contract coming or something like this, there is an implementation process, and that's why I think it's always something to consider automation by us, or preferably by us. But
yeah.
Tim,
and Adam, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add in there. So Adam, let's say you're starting out. If you're just starting your pre-roll line, it doesn't make sense to buy one of our machines. And there's plenty of conversations that we have with potential clients where the answer isn't our system. Like obviously you need to be operating at a certain scale for this to make sense. Most people start out with knock boxes. That's kind of where everybody starts. You start out with a knock box, and then there's variations of semi-automated knock boxes or larger knock boxes. So there is a way to scale up your processes without making a massive investment, and seeing how the market reacts to your product. Another popular option is, again, maybe you're just getting into this initially, co-packers or white labelers. There's plenty of people out there that have equipment like ours, whatever type of equipment they have, but you can get into start producing, or you can start creating a brand without necessarily making the product yourself by going and talking to a white labeler or a co-packer. That's another popular route that a lot of brands go to.
And that would be a great reason to get in touch with Ben too, because Ben would probably know who to connect. Go ahead, Charles.
I just want to chime in and say that we've seen numbers of our clients starting from scratch with us. From the planning, from the initial investing, we were in the planning. So there's always an option. And maybe automation is the option to start with sometimes.
Jumping into our next question, Ben, this is right up your alley. How do you prevent clogging with infused material? That's always an issue with heavily infused joints.
I think there's a couple things that go into that. First off is not over infusing. Like jamming as much concentrate into a joint doesn't make it a better joint. Generally, it's going to not have good airflow. It's going to clog. It's not going to burn properly. It's going to be a soggy, wet mess. So just, I understand that a lot of markets chasing that percentage is kind of the name of the game, but not doing it at the detriment of your product. So don't over infuse.
The worst thing you could do is over infuse and give a bad experience because they'll never try it again. So you'd rather go, correct me if I'm wrong, but the burn of it has got to be the number one consideration almost, because if that burn isn't right, everything else kind of falls off.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now I would say once you figured out not to over infuse, the second part of it's going to be to truly homogenize your product. A lot of people believe that they have a system where if they're doing a dry infusion or a wet infusion, that they have their system down where that concentrate's getting evenly mixed throughout the ground material. Generally, that's not the case. Generally, you're not having that true even dispersion of concentrate. So you really want to focus in on your homogenization process to make sure that your concentrate is evenly distributed. If you have bits of concentrate here, if you have an air pocket here, well, that's going to promote canoeing, running. The heat's going to go to where that fuel is. That heat's going to go to where that air pocket is, and that's where you're going to get a lot of your uneven burn. And that's true also with just a flower joint on the not having it consistently packed through. But those would be the two main things that I would say. Focus on those initially, and then you're on the right path.
And don't overpack it.
Don't overpack, ever.
So let's get to one of these. The pre-roll sector is highly competitive and saturated. This one came in on one of the comments on LinkedIn earlier. What SKUs do you guys see moving more than others?
I would say it goes towards infused dog walkers, multi-packs, and that's what we see. We see a lot of blunts. There's not a lot of research about what's going on with blunts, but I think there's more blunts and smaller blunts than it used to be. And it's just harder to investigate on a market level because it's not like infused versus non-infused. And I see, maybe Ben can correct me if he sees differently, but I see the party is back, like the 120, 140, the bigger pre-rolls that almost disappeared in COVID are back again. So, but it changes. That's why I'm saying you cannot. It's gonna be hard to pack eventually because it's always gonna be something different.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely smaller profiles. That, as Shahar mentioned, once COVID hit, it became less cool to pass around a joint around a group of 10 people. That wasn't so hip anymore. And then also, of course, with more states becoming legal, you're getting a lot of cannabis users that aren't your traditional, person that's used to putting down a full gram joint. So you give them something that's less intimidating, give them something that's a 0.3, a 0.5. And that's where we're seeing a lot of velocity with our operators is smaller formats, multi-packs, as Shahar mentioned. Infused, of course, that's not going away. Infused joints are here to stay. But yeah, blunts are definitely a thing. And blunt can mean a couple things to different people. Some people, a blunt is taking your Swisher Sweet or your cigar, hauling it out and packing it full of bud. But you also have, a blunt cone where basically you're just taking a different type of wrap in a cone format. Those have been one of the reasons why they haven't been as popular is it is more labor, time consuming to make. So they're more expensive to make. You can't make as many at a time as you can a regular cone. But now with some improvements in papers, with some improvements in technology, you can now start to produce, a blunt similar to the race where you produce a cone. So we are seeing an uptick in the velocity on blunt sales as well.
David, how are you seeing SKU flexibility between all the different pre-rolls that you make?
Okay, tell him. Manny
We
knows more about this than I do. I'll let him speak to it.
we do a lot of 1 gram cones, but the most I've seen is a high demand for 0.5. So shorter joints is way better. People like smaller ones.
Yeah.
That's
And I think
that's because of one of two reasons. Either our shit is really good. Oh, I shouldn't have cussed. Or either that or people just don't have any friends anymore. They don't smoke with anybody. I don't know.
And I do think that people love to try products before they jump. They love to try entry-level SKUs before they jump into higher value SKUs. So it's nice to be able to have that kind of fluctuate, versatility. Adam, I love this question. I'm going to jump in right now. Ben, you might have to do some math for me. Assume that we're scaling to 10 million joints monthly. We do not use any automation currently. At 1,500 to 2,000 joints per hour could be too expensive to scale, and CapEx required to hit these numbers is wildly significant. How do you scale your equipment, or how do you use your equipment to scale up to this capacity? So how would you approach that from your side?
Sure. So that's a great question. First off, I would ask how many people are you using to produce this amount of joints? I'd ask a handful of questions, but I've mentioned this earlier on that there is a lower barrier to entry, not only on our equipment, but more expensive equipment due to the financing mechanisms that now are available in our space. So for instance, one popular financing mechanism is to do a lease to own model where basically you have a lease and then at the end of the lease, you pay $1 now you own the equipment. So the advantage of that compared to just buying it outright, you've now taken that CapEx, you've turned it into an OpEx. And so that also helps you with 280E, if everybody's familiar with the whole 280E tax statute where, anyway, not to get all nerdy CPA on you, but if you turn a CapEx into an OpEx, it allows you to get around 280E because now you can directly attribute the cost of that equipment to your cost of goods sold. So now you're able to capture more of value on your tax returns. Again, sorry to nerd out a little bit on you, but Adam, that's one way that you can go from where you are now and scale up more is by taking advantage of some of these financing mechanisms that are out there where you don't have to do this massive capital outlay. For instance, for us and some other equipment manufacturers that are out there, one of the more popular financing plans that people will choose is a plan to go either a 24 or 36 month term, and your initial investment is first and last month's payment. So on our equipment, that could be as low as $15,000 to get you into a monthly payment over 36 months. Again, compare that to what your labor cost is. And again, a lot of variables that go in there, but there are ways for you to get into not only our equipment, but other equipment that can help you scale without that massive capital outlay, where you can start seeing that ROI immediately. And in many cases, you're actually decreasing your costs right from the get-go by going into automation with the proper financing plan.
Yeah, to add on to that, I want to drop that. If you go to hephaestustech.com, which I drop it right there, hephaestustech.com, you'll find on the blog a ton of breakdown of how this stuff structures out. I was pretty impressed when I was going through it, but a lot of these questions you'll find specific blog posts on the site for, where the team's dumped, all the knowledge and stuff into some great, resources that you could read on that side. Only another minute or two, guys. Am I leaving anything on the table? Anything else that we want to chat about going around? I think we hit on every kind of conversation other than this heavy infused materials affects the cone. So like, do you need a heavier paper for heavier infused materials?
My quick thought on that is if your infused material is affecting the paper, you probably have too much in there. If it's soaking through and it's now bleeding into the paper and it's affecting the burn, you probably need to back off your infusion.
Or the process of infusion is wrong.
Or yeah, exactly.
No. My takeaway from this side, not being the pre-roll expert, is to just reach out to Ben and reach out to Shahar, because they've worked with the largest, large all the way down to mom and pops, and have basically seen and done it. I really have a hard time thinking that there's a product you'd be looking to automate that they don't have experience with. And that's generally where the conversations start, I feel like, is, you identify what you want to scale, and then someone like Ben will give you the path to that. And then next thing you know, you're like David in Garden Greens, where you're busting out all these SKUs and you can't keep it on the shelf. David, thank you, and Manny, for joining us. Guys, this will be recorded. It is recorded, so we'll send out recordings of this. If you want the deck, just email Ben. His email is right there, ben@hephaestustech.com, and then we'll get it to you. We'll probably post it up on the site too, so you guys can go back. But thank you to Shahar, Ben, David, Manny. Thank you to everyone that joined. Any closing on your side, Shahar, or are you all good, buddy?
No, I'm good. I just want to say thank you. Enjoy, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. If you want a free pre-roll evaluation and product assessment, hit us up, hephaestustech.com. We look forward to continuing the conversation, and keep your eye out, because we're going to have another webinar coming probably in the next couple months. So we'll invite you all to it. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Tim.